First off, I just wanted to acknowledge the karakia that Zane opened us with tonight. Thank you to acknowledge tangata whenua, to acknowledge the whare that we're in. Thank you so much, and to acknowledge everybody here sitting on the panel, and to all of you who came tonight. So we're here tonight to talk about the Treaty Principles Bill, and before we get started, just some housekeeping. There's a wharepa kupu there. If there's any kind of fire things, just get it outside, and make sure that you take someone with you. And was there anything else?
No, not
no?
for me.
Okay, sweet.
Too good.
I also, just in terms of if anybody's filming tonight, please don't film our beautiful sis Anevili. She would like to remain off social media. It's okay to record her audio, but no filming of her. This will be live streamed, and there'll be reels that are generated from this conversation, so if everyone's okay with that, then yeah. I guess also this conversation, I would like for it to be more of like a group conversation, so if you guys have questions of each other, please feel free. It's not going to be like a typical panel. It's more like a talanoa. So I guess before we get started, what is it? The treaty. There's a lot of misinformation about Te Tiriti in the public at the moment, and I guess before we get started into what the Treaty Principles Bill is and how we can kind of organise together, the question that I had for us here is kind of what is a treaty. I want people to leave here with some facts about what it is and what it isn't. So if anyone wanted to start? Zane?
Yeah, I can start definitely.
Yeah.
Kia ora e te wī.
Sorry, no. Intros.
I can do that.
Yeah, you just gotta intro yourself.
Yeah, I'll introduce myself. Awesome whānau. Awa tēnā koutou e te iwi he reo no Ngāti Pikiao no Ngāti Kuri Hoki, ko Zane Wedding toku ingoa. And whānau, it's a real honour to have you here in South Auckland tonight hosting these kinds of conversations. And just some languaging tonight, which will speak to the question there. If I say treaty or te treaty, exactly the same thing, whānau. There is only one thing, and it's te treaty. It's the, when we think of the context that the treaty or te treaty was given out, it was read, whānau, and it was read into reo Māori, and we know that there's a big flash word for why this is, but the only treaty that exists is te treaty, the reo Māori version of it, and that's it. But there's also something that should come before that I should always speak to, which is he whakaputanga, whānau. And he whakaputanga we often hear it talked to as like the tuakana document of te treaty. And basically for me, he whakaputanga is just for Māori the exact time that we were able to establish, to put that po in the ground of our independence. People like to talk of it as sovereignty. I like the word of independence. And when he whakaputanga came about, that was what allowed us and the Crown to actually have a treaty. It means that through he whakaputanga, we established ourselves as an independent nation, and that is what allowed there to be a treaty in the first place. And when I say treaty or te treaty, exactly the same thing, only one version of te treaty, and it's the Māori version. And I just want to tap on one thing there before I hand this over. Because it was read, there was a fourth article, and that fourth article has the exact same standing to me as the provisions 1, 2, and 3. The articles 1, 2, and 3, and that fourth article is really about like the protection of our tikanga, and it stands alongside all 3 of those other articles. So yeah, that's what te treaty is. It's like an established vision for the thriving of 2 nations within Aotearoa. So yeah, that's it from me. I'll send it over that way somewhere.
Thank you.
Tēnā tātou katoa, ko Max Harris tōku ingoa, he Pākehā hau. My name is Max and I'm Pākehā. Just wanted to say big thanks to Brooke and Zane and others for pulling this together, and wanted to acknowledge mana whenua in the space that we're in, and this beautiful whare and all of you for coming out. My family's from South Wales, a little mining village called Seven Sisters, and Glasgow in Scotland, and also Birmingham in England. And maybe just to build on what Zane said, I agree with everything that Zane said. So when we talk about Te Tiriti, the treaty, the Māori text is the text that we should be talking about. And Zane mentioned the fourth article. Just for those that don't know about the three articles, very simply, the three articles in Te Tiriti are Article 1 about kāwanatanga, so crown government, governorship. That's not crown sovereignty, so Māori did not cede sovereignty in that first article. Article 2, tino rangatiratanga for Māori. And Article, we could say a little bit more about that, but Article 3, that Māori have the same rights, duties and privileges as the British. So that hopefully just fills in a bit, building on what Zane said, and Te Tiriti o Waitangi is the reason I am in this country as a Pākehā person.
Malo lava le suifo maua malelangi mama. My name's, I go by Fitz. My family name's Refiti Manase. My family, I come from Niue in Samoa, and yeah, I'm New Zealand born, and yeah, so I fall under the Te Tiriti as well. But I'm also, as a New Zealand born, most of you might know we haven't been taught the Te Tiriti at school. So my journey starting late and learning about it, like we hear about it for so long, but understanding it and standing with it is two different things. So I'm on a journey of finding truth, because like Brooke said, there's misinformation, there's whatever it is, but at the end of the day, the truth is the truth. So I'm hoping that I can sit here and understand and learn more and find out what it is that we all need to learn, and connect, because the answer that we all need to do to move and thrive is to connect and come together. So yeah, I'm excited to learn off these brothers and yourselves. Cheers.
Hi everyone, I'm Anibili. From my mother, I come from Pupua, and she's from Almankoko, but I don't live there. From my father, I'm from Si'umu and Pokasiba, and Saitipi and Samoa. My parents moved here in the 70s, just in time for the dawn raids, I like to say. And so yeah, similarly to Fitz, my upbringing has been mostly focused on what is happening for Samoan people, or our experience as migrant people in here under the crown. And I think that lens, I've been able to understand, I guess, the way the crown operates in colonization, but 100% of learning it late. And even now, we're still trying to figure out what our place is, or what the dynamic is when pre-Te Tiriti we had relations, right? We have whānau links to tangata whenua, but this idea that because we related before, that we don't come here through Te Tiriti, where it's the crown that brought us here, unless you somehow arrived here before then. But yeah, so hopefully we can talk to that a bit more.
You can speak for now.
It's okay, I'm so nervous. I'll let me warm up and I'll get into it soon. Thank you.
I think I just wanted to add, we were at Te Hui Oranga, or Te Moana Nui Akua, so it was a conference that was held over the weekend, and it was about bringing activists, bringing together people across our ocean in order to protect the well-being of our ocean. It was the 40th anniversary since the first one was held, and it was based around a nuclear-free and independent Pacific. But at Hui, we had the iconic Tina Ngāta come and speak to us about te tiriti and he whakaputanga. And one thing that she said that about one of the articles actually wasn't about Article 1 around kāwanatanga. It wasn't about establishing a government here, it was a Governor General. She was very specific about that. And so I think, te tiriti doesn't actually allow a government because Māori didn't cede sovereignty. And so I think, they only allowed a representative of the Crown to be here in order to, be the go-to between Māori and the British. And so I think that's something else that we should be really clear about when we're talking about it, and sharing conversations amongst each other. And I think especially as ocean peoples, in terms of like our solidarity and connection, and that's really, really important. So I just wanted to add that. Was there anything else in terms of like if we're hearing stuff, in the community that we're like, let's hella off, that's not at all around, or we're all good to move on?
Can I just say one thing?
And
I think
the mic undies, or can we just
Okay. So just to speak into that just a little bit, because there's always this narrative that floats around that Māori didn't have an understanding of what was happening then, and kei te he, tino kore nei, like our ancestors knew exactly what they were signing. They knew every single word. They had been introduced to the ideas of kāwana or kāwanatanga early on. Te Pahi went to New South Wales, I think it was in 1808. So these ideas of, and he met a governor then, so we understood what kāwanatanga was. We understood what tino rangatiratanga was. That was established through he whakaputanga. So one of the big things, and I am confronted by this all the time, by some of my peers, some of my friends who are like, oh, nah, we didn't even know what we were signing. E kao, that is a part of a narrative that tries to make us out, that our ancestors out to not be as genius as they are, which we are. And I just want to like stop that right now. We knew what we were signing, and under the context of why it was signed, there was great vision for establishing like a beautiful country. And I still think that vision is held within Te Tiriti now, but it's really important that we straight away kill the narrative that we didn't understand what we were signing. We did.
I guess we can kind of move into the conversation about then what is the Treaty Principles Bill? So, and why do we think ACT is pushing a bill like this through government? So, who wants to go first?
Okay, so we know what te tiriti is and he whakaputanga, and then we come to the Treaty Principles. So they were first introduced in 1975 when the Waitangi Tribunal was set up. And they are a watered-down version of what is in te tiriti. But this phrase, the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, was then put into more legislation through the 80s and 90s. And so, for example, in conservation law, in public health law, elsewhere. And they have been developed over time by the Waitangi Tribunal and the courts. And the principles are now recognised as things like partnership, active protection, and over time the principles have also included tino rangatiratanga itself and kāwanatanga. One way of thinking about the treaty principles is we've got te tiriti over here, which has like its own independent force, right? And then we've got the Crown law here, which doesn't recognise te tiriti in full. But one way of thinking about the treaty principles is this sort of like thread between te tiriti and the Crown law, this very kind of thin thread. And one way of thinking about the Treaty Principles Bill is it's the current Crown trying to cut that thread between te tiriti in full and this quite watered down version that's currently in the law. I won't go on for too long, but very briefly what the Treaty Principles Bill is, it's part of the coalition agreement between ACT and National. It's these three principles that mirror the structure of te tiriti, but mutilate the content of te tiriti, and they don't really have any relationship to the content of te tiriti. And in particular, the second principle, where you would expect tino rangatiratanga, the ultimate paramount chiefly authority for Māori, has been distorted and warped. And so the ACT Party had a first go at this, where they said the second principle is chieftainship for all New Zealanders. So you can tell that that's quite different from tino rangatiratanga for Māori, right? Chieftainship for all New Zealanders. Then when there's been quite a lot of pushback, they've had a second go, the amended treaty principles, where they now talk about the rights of hapu and iwi, but if you look at what comes underneath that, they say rights of hapu and iwi only extend to what is agreed by the Crown in law or through settlement. So basically only what the Crown has agreed to. So again, pulling back control to the Crown. So yeah, think about the Treaty Principles Bill as this attempt to make law that is trying to cut the thread that connects te tiriti to the law, that tries to distort these already watered down principles, and that's coming after tino rangatiratanga. And maybe if I just add one more thing, which is like why they're doing this, I think we can all give different answers, but I think one important thing is that te tiriti has been important for everyone in being a block to privatisation and corporatisation. So the selling off of assets, the selling off of, for example, there's talk about privatising the healthcare system, so selling off the public healthcare system, so healthcare is treated like a business. The treaty principles, as watered down as they are, have been a block to that in the 80s and in the past. And I think one important point is that removing the treaty principles, distorting them, is a way to kind of remove this roadblock to more privatisation and corporatisation, which would just make the wealthy wealthier and the poor poorer.
Does anybody want to add to that? Do you have anything to add?
I'm here to listen, but my question from where I stand is, what makes them think that they can add and take away from the te tiriti? Like, and why are we following the narrative, like even just being here saying that they're changing it makes us agree that they have the power to change it, when really we should be just ignoring it. Like, I'm just trying to understand, like, they have no power over changing that te tiriti, right? So why are we talking about and making it out like they do have the power to change it? That's what I try and understand.
I guess try to kind of give a response to what you asked. I think my thinking, and I talked to Brooke about this before, is like a want for having these kind of hui and being able to talk to each other is to try build movement, because fully agree the Crown does not have any power over us, but they have military, like they have every resource behind them to enforce whatever law they want. And so this thing of I feel like by talking to our people and talking to each other and empowering ourselves to do stuff against it, it's putting our faith and loyalty not in a party or not in a politician, but in our ability as people to do the right thing. And one of the things I want to say as well that Tina brought up in her presentation about he whakapapa and te tiriti, she said, and I was like, man, I forget about this detail that she said, like specifically, te tiriti says that a governor will be, is granted as appointed by hapu Māori, like, which is important. It's not given to anyone by the Crown. That authority is not gifted by any foreign power. It's not even by like one centralized power. It's literally that the way, say, Zane's people versus people out in Te Waipoinamu, like they're going to do things differently. And it's that kind of relationship we want to foster, right? Like, but we don't need a centralized government. Not to say, I don't know, don't make me out to be one of those, but anyway. But I think that we are trying to push. I feel like this is a necessary step towards a movement for liberation. And something I want to speak to, even talking about he whakaputanga as independence and our sovereignty, right? Sovereignty is such a colonizing concept. Like the purpose of it is to create a difference between a sovereign power, like an overarching if like omnipotent power over another group of people, and that is like a class you're relegated to. But this thing of independence still is one step towards a recognized liberation, a full, like freedom's not even the word, but liberation in Samoan, not to extend to Samoans, but the word like we use is sa'olotonga, which is like sa'o is like correct. It's the word we use for like the paramount chief as well, but sa'o and loto, which is like your heart. Our word when we did our constitution was well thought of, just like tino rangatitanga, like manamotu hake, like they're not. I do think this principles thing and this kind of campaign to say like we the Crown can change this thing is a real effort to make us doubt ourselves, to kind of like extract faith from our people and put it into those so-called authorities, but that, you know, your understanding of mana motu hake, of mana, is like inherent, like that can't be given to you or taken from you. And I do think like it's a real act of grace, I think, from Māori to even try to like walk the Crown through these things, you know, like, is this a live stream? I was gonna say something, but I don't wanna get us in trouble. We're taking off.
Get us in trouble.
But, so I'll talk to you guys in private when it's.
No, what was Tina? She said you were saying how Tina was saying that it was the Governor General was appointed by Hapu.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And she said that power to appoint is also a power to unappoint or to revoke that. That we don't just, we appoint you and now you have this lifelong, eternal power. It's like, no, you done it wrong. We're going to take that back and appoint someone else. Actually, the way she started it, before saying anything, she said, to preface this, I want to reiterate that he tapu tiriti, to say that this is tapu. It's not this isn't just a legal document. What the weight of it to tangata whenua of the time, right? And she talked about how like even people putting their markings, sacred markings, that I know our peoples across the Pacific, we don't share that. Like we don't, you know, you can't copy paste it to anybody. Those things are sacred to us, and I think some of I'm gonna end up thinking, but some of the I guess to the initial question of falsehoods that we hear, something you hear a lot is our people, non-Māori people, talking about te tiriti and toitu te tiriti being a movement for Māori, that we're doing you guys a favor, like this is our solidarity. And it's so like, that's not even needed, bro. Like you can't give solidarity to the people who are the authority, right? And so this kind of like distancing ourselves from te tiriti, like we don't want to make it personal to us. But I think we really need to, I feel like this is an opportunity for us to re-identify or recognize like our, personal, and even like spiritual, cultural links to te tiriti, like individually and as a community. Like this is not, the Crown does not facilitate my relationship with tangata whenua. It does not facilitate my relationship to Hapu Māori, and it's that kind of like, I can only speak to my own people. For Samoan people, we have like agreements that were spoken that to this day, that's like thousands of years ago, like 8 generations ago, that my people say, you can't go over there in that village, that's theirs. And I go, I thought I belonged to all of this place. And they go, no, we agreed. And it's that like, our people, we know the weight of words, right? Like we know the weight of agreements. And I think the Crown, the Government Act, whatever the party, even literally, whatever the party, Labour is as much an aggressor as ACT or National, whoever. And so this thing of teaching ourselves and each other and reminding ourselves and each other that we know the weight of those words. And so the Crown can, whatever violations they bring, I feel like this is an opportunity for us to show like we're better than that. Like we're not. My standards are not the same as the British crown, king, queen, whoever they're oppressed by and forced to follow. Yeah, that's not our standard, and that's not our way. And I think it's important to remind our Pacific peoples who are not Māori or not Māori of this whenua that we know better. Like we're not, this is an opportunity for us to uphold the sacredness of that agreement, that even if we weren't there to sign it, to agree, that we have come with the understanding and we know better and will do better to acknowledge and honor it. Sorry.
Thank you. It's kind of hard to follow on from that, but I think, I guess I wanted to kind of go back and speak to what you were talking about, Max, about privatisation. I guess especially because we're in South Auckland, and what does privatisation, if let's say it's allowed to go through and it kind of removes that block of further privatising, what does that mean for us as a country, but also specifically for South Auckland?
Yeah, sweet. Funny, like we're sitting on stolen whenua right now, whānau. Like this whenua was confiscated, and nobody feels the effects of not honouring te tiriti like the people who live in impoverished communities. And there's this idea around of creating radical Māori, but the truth is radical Māori exist every day under the pressures that society puts on them. They are living the most radical lives out there, just putting food on their table. And at the moment, they're faced with all those things. Intensification is rife. And when we're talking about intensification and the way that interacts with whenua, once again, mana whenua isn't getting any say over the way that Mangere is intensified at the moment. And that intersects perfectly with te tiriti. And what's trying to happen is more and more we're trying to eat away at any kind of rights that mana whenua have within that sphere. And I just have to say, whānau, because this is really important, the Treaty Principles Bill is not the only place that this is happening within legislation. If you look at legislation, there's a lot of tinkering going on at the moment around anything that has to do with te tiriti that has been inserted into legislation. And when we look at things like fast track, well, we know what's happening there. They want to have te tiriti just completely, any reference of te tiriti omitted, so that those people who have the money to develop can develop without any say from anybody except for 3 politicians. Once again, te tiriti is so central to all of this. They tinker with te tiriti in all parts of legislation to empower the richest and to continue to push down the poorest. And that's why it's so important to bring these types of conversations into these types of neighborhoods, because, brother, I understand that we do have tino rangatiratanga. I can go out and every day we can honour te tiriti on our own. We can go down to our local marae and we can pitch in. We can learn the stories of our whenua, and that's powerful too. But within the kāwanatanga sphere, within the sphere of the government, they start to tinker with our reo. All of a sudden, our kura kaupapa Māori is starting to disappear. They start to tinker with our legislation around te taiao. All of a sudden, we got no more trees, no more birds in our neighbourhoods. And people who live in South Auckland, they feel the impacts of this every single day, harder than anybody feels this. Here, we don't get a say And that's why this kind of like mobilization period, this activation period is so important. Because what Anivili said is the truth. Power is held with people. We hold the power. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter who is in Parliament. The people hold their feet to the fire to ensure that the policy reflects what the people want. And that's why we must be really careful how we allow politicians to shape the voice of the people. Because when the people march, it's for the people. I march for the whenua, I march for tangata, and more than anything, I march for tangata whenua. So that's just how it works, whānau. Kia ora.
So on privatisation, privatisation is when a public service that is often free then gets sold off to a business and run like a business. And in the 1980s in New Zealand, there was an intense period where lots of things got privatised. That's sometimes called Rogernomics, right? And so why don't we have society in this country where you can travel around by train? Because we sold off the trains in the 1980s. The government, well, I should say the government, not we. The government sold off banks. The government sold off telecoms. The government sold off all of this key infrastructure, power. And what it did was mean that more of our society was run like a business rather than run like a free public service. And if you think about the parts of our society now that are free and like public service, run like public services, there's not that much left. But you could think of like free primary and secondary education, free healthcare, or it's meant to be free healthcare, free libraries. So we've got these pockets. Swimming pools, leisure centres. Yeah, Otahu swimming pool.
Yeah, Mangere too.
So what I want to say about this is if more things were privatised, a couple of things would change. One, life would get more expensive, right? Because these essential services are run like a business. And so you couldn't get these things for free, and that means the cost of living goes up even further. But even more than that, the values of our society would change. We're already like a market-dominated society focused on extraction and exploitation, where workers' rights are like screwed down and profits are screwed up. But you privatise more and you lose even more of that sense of community and collective values, and you move more towards a society focused on extracting everywhere, exploiting everywhere. So I think that's what we are looking at if we don't oppose the Treaty Principles Bill and the broader agenda and build a movement, like Zane said and Anavili said. And maybe one last thing I'll say, I know we're throwing around some long words here, like privatisation and talking about quite a lot of detail, but I really don't think you have to be an expert to be able to act on this and talk to your whānau and families and community about this. And I know so many of us in our bones know that this bill is wrong, and maybe we just want to feel a bit more confident to be able to go out and speak about it. And I guess the only reason we're here is just to hopefully help you feel a bit more confident when you leave this room tonight.
Thank you. I guess I wanted to pick up too on what you said, Fitz, around like how does the Crown think they have this power to do these things, and ask you, like, where do you feel the opportunities are in your community around like reclaiming and remembering that power that you talk about all the time, so that the Crown knows they can't kind of come in and mess with it. I'm so sorry.
It's really hard because perspectives are different, and the knowledge that you have on Te Tiriti supersedes mine. But from my lens, I can't speak on my whole community, but for myself, I think civil disobedience is where it is. Like, there's no need to put up a fight. Like we all know that the power that we give other people is the power they have. So I stand on my power and my mana saying, nah, I'm not giving you anything. So, like, you only give control to people that you allow to control you. So that's where I stand. So the more I learn, the more I start understanding how we can keep our power and share to others how to keep our power. So that's where I stand anyway.
I think, yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of work that we need to do with our people just to get to that stage. And I think part of that, we want to uplift and empower, you know, like in your gut to know that it can't be taken from us, but also look at where our, you know, sorry, let me backtrack. I think this is a point where solidarity is really important. And I think that thing of, and recognizing your own power and your ability to, you know, use it or enact it for action, activate it for action. I think we then also have to be able to see, like, around us where that light has diminished, right? Like, I think something, South Auckland forever has always been like a, what is that? What's those things? Like, like the like flamethrowers type. Not a flamethrower, but it has been a place where the fire has been really strong. And I would say even just like during the COVID years, we've seen the Crown with, including again, on both partisan lines, diminish our people over and over again, and not just us, but especially Māori. And I think this is where that kind of like, I'm trying to think like what a strategy is, I guess, to be able to use like what Fitz has said, and Zane and Max, to get us to a point where like we can actually snatch that back from the Crown. And I think that us being able to, one, understand what that disempowerment is. It's not just psychological, it's not just emotional, like the infrastructure, as you said, the privatizing, making things impossible to get to. I was born and bred in Papakura, but I have since moved to Pikakohe, where it's much cheaper, but getting here, like, it's impossible, even getting to town. And so, you know, with when I look at the Free Palestine movement and the like resurgence since October 7th, getting to the city is like impossible most of the time. And this kind of like, you know, distancing of our communities is a deliberate thing. If we look back into the 80s, even like the 70s, the resistance to all these things that the Crown have introduced, our people have been able to meet in central areas because they're accessible, but they're no longer that. And it's, you know, how do we look at what the tactics of the Crown are, or of our oppressor? They're insidious, and they're in every single level. How do we, one, maintain the fire in our bellies, help to light each other's when they go out, and also keep an eye on like, what are the dynamics that are happening here? What are those little undercover digs that they're making, and how do we burn that before it can take root? Oh yeah, it's a weed and we need to pull it out. But
great metaphor.
I'm just going to add something that really made me think of, which is Noam Chomsky, the American writer, has a really good, memorable way of thinking about the privatization playbook. So what the government is doing when it privatizes, and he just talks about 3 steps. Number 1, the government defunds something, so they cut a service. Number 2, people get fed up and angry about the service. Number 3, it gets privatized. So number 1, defund. Number 2, people get fed up. Number 3, you privatize it. And you can see that, for example, potentially happening with our healthcare system, where it's underfunded, people get fed up. And last week there was a report that went to the government that got leaked that showed the government was thinking about co-pay for emergency healthcare. That means getting people to pay for emergency healthcare. So just like Anavile and Fitz were saying, like, I think we just need to understand the red flags to look out for so that we can prime ourselves to hold back, to grab back our power. Like Fitz was saying.
Just to touch on some of that, whānau, South Auckland's ability to mobilise and organise is unmatched. Like, if the kaupapa is right, South Auckland turn up like nowhere else in the country. Samoa beat Australia, boom. We got, no, I'm serious. There's a rally out there just instantaneously, Tonga, and it's in our neighbourhood. Like, I know that we laugh about this, but as an activist who's tried to mobilise for years, I wish I had the ability to mobilise my community like the community of South Auckland does when they want to do something. Do you know what I mean? And like, Anifili, you've hit the nail on the head 100 times tonight, especially when you talk about like where we hold our rallies, because it's always in the city, and that's beyond the means of a lot of us here. And for me, I'm like, nothing makes me prouder when Otahu is just like swamped with people and the flags are all out and we're marching in our own communities. And I think that's something that's like underrated in terms of the movement at the moment. It's like we don't have to go to the city. You know, you mobilize with the Mangere, you turn up with 5,000 people in Mangere, and that speaks volumes, especially to the people from Mangere who we know are answerable to our community. Like, we go back to our homes and they're just there, whānau. They're always within our community. Our leaders are responsible to us within South Auckland. So if we're able to mobilize, we are able to like shift change in these spaces. And I just want people to understand that when you're from Mangere and you're from South Auckland, you can still mobilize in your own neighborhood just like that and show the power that we have within our communities. We don't have to be excluded. We can do it here and they can come to us. So, kia ora.
I'm so glad you said that. It just reminded me. One of the things I also wanted to have us talk about is the way, like, mobilizing in this area and elsewhere, but that kind of like belief that we can do it. And this is what I think the 275, like the stuff you guys are doing, is the perfect place. This is me trying to push you guys. We can do it but there's like, I think trying to be smart about how we talk to our people, and this is, I guess, the point we can look at what the propaganda is like in our community. Because, trying to do things one-on-one is so hard, especially in a lot of the Pacific community in South Auckland, a very strong, like, pro-Israel politic. And that, trying to undo that, or even trying to, like, walk our people through those things, and even pro, like, national and that coalition. Oh my goodness. But the reason I bring this up is like the propaganda is something we have to be really vigilant about. And that's not to say that you all are responsible for your whole community and converting everyone, but we do need to be strategic, like tactical about how we get our people even to that point, because they do look at, what's his name? David Seymour. Like, they door knock everywhere. Like, every community, they show up, and it's that kind of presence. But the presence that we have and struggle in a movement to a lot of our people is like these angry people who are ungrateful for what we've been given in the land of milk and honey, and it's trying to reframe that. We need more community spaces, which is why I do love what you guys do, because we actually need a non-denominational, to be honest, like non-religious, just to be as inclusive and expansive as we can, to foster that place. Because I do think for our people, going back to the spirit of Tititi, like, we honor and cherish relationships. Like, that is the currency for our people. Maybe not the ones that have gotten super rich and don't care about that anymore, but for the majority of our people, it's in building relationship, we can transform our hearts. It sounds so cheesy, but it's real. But that's what we need, is that, as the late and great Matua Mona Jackson says, like, transformation is what we need. It's not just a little change, like, to completely transform our love for each other and how that manifests. Oh, yeah, sorry, I've gone off the thing.
Yeah, I'd like to back you up on that too. So I think it goes, like, if we look around us, everything that's in this world is to bring a divide to us. So I think what we need to do first is everyone needs to come to an understanding that we all have different views on things. Because what's going to happen is they'll throw up one view and then get people to fight against each other. So what they're doing at the moment is what they're trying to do, Pākehā against Māori. Like, so they're throwing that at us, and then the idiots who are taking the bait are fighting at each other. So we need to go deeper to understand that we all come with different views, and that's okay. The main thing is that we all got to stay connected. So we just got to, I think that's how I see things. If I have a view on something and someone comes to me, like the perfect example is the jabs, you know. One half of New Zealand wanted the jabs, the other half didn't. All good, it's up to you. But the way they fed it to us was us fighting at each other. And the idiots who fought at each other fell for it, you know. So I think before we even start getting to that, we need to go deeper so that when something gets thrown at us that we don't agree with, our ego doesn't get in the way, and we're like, it's all good, like let's come to an understanding. So I think it's got to go deeper than surface stuff. You know?
Anyone else want to add anything? Are we okay to throw it out to the question? Okay, so yeah, before we kind of wrap up, are there any questions from the floor for anybody? Anyone with the mic or?
Just on the sense of the treaty principle bills, and I guess when we look at Te Tiriti in the English context, a lot of times in the English context, in the Māori view, we believe that we're infants of the state. And in some contexts, we believe, when are we going to get our adolescence? And so, does the treaty principle bills, does that change our thing of being infants of the state? And if they're going to say that all Kiwis are going to be mentioned underneath this treaty bill, does that mean that they will become infants of the state, just like us? Because clearly the treaty has really been about passing us in our class titles. And when we become infants of the state, all of our caregiving and land entitlements all come to the caregiver of that person. And that's what Te Whakapūtanga, Te Reo Waitangi really formulated around, was all these services. And I think, like, when you talk about privatisation, I think of all tamariki. Imagine the devastation of privatisation of all tamariki. Imagine the disconnection of te ao Māori that's been so ingrained in their services, that's allowed families to connect back to their wairoa, back to their whānau, through disconnection of being inside the city, and then reconnecting back up into the north. And I think when we think about all these things of privatisation, there's separations. You know, when the privatisation of prisons went into state, and that's when a prisoner of being Māori tangata whenua goes into prison, they receive all land dividends goes to Circa, a privatised prison. Yes. So not only do they receive $90,000 from a taxpayer per prison, but also the land dividends that of the Māori person receiving with that whenua. And that's like forestry, pine trees and all that. And I just sit there and I think that if we talk about all New Zealanders, do all New Zealanders want to come underneath Te Tiriti Waitangi? Because it exploits us. It takes the principles of who we are and it exploits us, and it takes the value of what we produce off our whenua. And I just really think, are we really thinking clearly about when we're thinking about these principles? That when we want to be becoming all as one, do we understand the abuse that how these principles and these treaties have been treating us as people on this land? And that it's the way that the colonials have incorporated the new system of how they take land. And I believe, are we really thinking clearly? And that's my real question, is that does the treaty bill, changing the principles, does that make us out of the infants of the state? Does that take us Māori out of infants? or does that bring more of us into infants and we allow the adolescents to be the crown?
Thank you.
You want?
Oh, yeah, they can do it.
Oh. So, bro, like, kia ora. But I definitely hear what you're saying. When you understand the context of why Te Tiriti was signed, but I don't think that although under the doctrine and although the colonial forces obviously thought of us as lesser, tautoko, I don't think that when Te Tiriti was signed, under the context that I know it was signed after the Boyd incident, after the Elizabeth affair and things like this had happened, there was a desire, because trade within this country had been like really good between like Maori moving trade over to New South Wales. We were making money, we were making bank. And then when we talk about Pākehā, they were doing the same thing. And then at a certain point, we had like a couple of things happen, like the Boyd incident, Google it, whānau. Then we had the Elizabeth affair, and that really threatened trade in New Zealand at that time. And I don't think they were looking at us as infants, and I know that my tupuna did not, but we outnumbered them by an amazing amount. They were under our control at that point. What has permeated since then? Well, that's a lot of that narrative that you're talking about, brother. But if I look at Te Tiriti, I don't look at Te Tiriti that way. When I'm talking about my ancestors who signed that, bro, they knew what they were doing. They were trying to create a country where, the Pākehā people here that were like out of control, who were actually being the kind of like childlike people within this whānau, they had to sign that, they had to make them have someone control them, appointed by us, just like Ani Vili says, a kāwana to look after these unruly people that were here. But at that time, we had all the mana. We had all the mana, bro. Go Google what happened in the Boyd incident. Go Google what happened at the Elizabeth affair, and you'll start to realize, like, oh shit, we needed trade to happen in here. And Māori went dumb. Like, some of the trade that was happening here was really, really good for our people. But it's what permeated after that. Then some of these narratives started to sink in. Then they started to steal all of our land that we're sitting on right now. Then they started to shape us into these people who are lesser. Then they started to take away our language. Then they started to do all these things. But for me, right now, Te Tiriti is the way we heal that shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, whānau, I'm one of the people who more often than not speaks to the hurt created by not honouring Te Tiriti. But at the moment, I like to look to the hope that Te Tiriti holds to heal all that bullshit I just mentioned. If you honour Te Tiriti in the way that it was meant to be honoured, bro, we're rangatira. E hari te mea tamariki, we're not the children here, we are the rangatira within this space. And our ancestors knew that. And they were kind enough and visionary enough to be like, you know what, whānau? You ain't got much. We'll look after you. We'll manaki you in this space. We'll ensure, but you know what? Look after your people. Make sure they're not being unruly. And soon things changed. And now we live in a totally different space where I don't get to grow up with my reo, just like you, my brother. Heoi, through Te Tiriti, we can get all that shit back. And I'm not talking about in a kāwanatanga sphere either. I'm actually dreaming of tino rangatiratanga outside of a kāwanatanga sphere. Tino rangatiratanga, like within a kāwanatanga sphere, is meaningless to me. And until we fulfill what Te Tiriti dreamed of for us through our rangatira, then this is the ka whawhai tonu mātou. It's the forever fight. I am engaged with the promises that my tupuna made. And everyone should be within this space. I am in agreement. I am committed to those promises. And I'm committed to ensure that the other side who made those promises, they hold up their end of the bargain too. So that's my kind of thing. I don't think we were childlike. I think we were rangatira. I know we were rangatira in that space. And through Te Tiriti, we'll be that rangatira again.
I'll just say two quick things. One, something that you made me think of on privatisation. One other thing about privatisation is it makes it harder for land to be returned. It makes land back harder because the Crown has less to return. So yesterday there was a landmark, like history-making court decision in Nelson, the Wakatu decision, where basically there was this finding that the Crown had breached this obligation to set aside the tenths of land, and you can go away and read up on this, but the judge found in favour of Māori, and said the right response here is return of land, but all of this land has been sold. And so compensation is the next best. So that's another thing, another reason to be worried about privatisation. So it will make life more expensive, it will change our values, and it will make that return of land, justified return of land, harder. And then just secondly, building off Zane's inspiring words, I totally agree that we shouldn't let the Crown lower our imaginations or limit our horizons. And I think we can, and I think Pākehā as well, need to support the work towards a much more exciting Mātiki Mai-based future. So, Zane was talking about a tino rangatira sphere and a kāwanatanga sphere, and this comes from the Mātiki Mai report that Moana Jackson, Margaret Mutu convened, and this idea of three spheres, a Crown sphere, kāwanatanga sphere, a tino rangatira sphere, and a relational sphere. That's so much more exciting to me as part of a different constitutional future. It's so much more honourable, and wouldn't it be? And I think it's really important for Pākehā, who've benefited from this racist system, to stand up against it and to support the work towards this more exciting future, right? And wouldn't it be amazing if we looked back in a few years and we said, what did you do when the Treaty Principles Bill came up? And you could say, I put up a Together for Te Tiriti placard, I joined the hikoi, I wrote my submission, and we started to build a Mātiki Mai-based future. That would be something to be proud of, eh?
Someone had a question at the back?
I was just going to say something brief. I wanted to talk off the comments that were made about the building of movements in South Auckland and building in the community and looking towards the community, and it was ordered or there was a sit-down really raised and we were organising earlier in the year, but so was Zane and so was some of our rangatahi, so that we could be looking at South Auckland as a place to be doing our organising and not simply looking at the wonderful work that's been done in the city, but looking among our own whānau here. We all have South Auckland family and roots. The second thing I just wanted to say briefly was to talk off all the speakers. We do a lot of work in this space. Brother Zane allows it. I wanted to talk off of his work for facilitating a lot of rangatahi work that we do here in South Auckland. Zane has a big part to play in all of that. But the third thing I wanted to say briefly was the importance of being visionary, which Zane has spoken about and what Max spoke about, and about imagining what another future could be. And the last thing I wanted to say was that in the African American community, when all their bad things that come down upon them with Trump and all the white racism that came down on them, their leaders and their community workers and their organisers on the ground, their thinking is, these people have organised against us for the last 50 years. So what's our 50-year plan? And when I heard all the wonderful speakers speaking tonight, I was thinking, what is our 50-year plan of what our futures may look like in terms of where we want to be and what we want to achieve? Because our enemies are doing that and have done it behind closed doors. That's what ACT has done. They keep their mouth shut and they've organised behind closed doors and they talk to all their friends, but they get it on the low. They've been organising probably for the last 20 years. It's not just yesterday. So all I would say is that we have greater capacity than them, because like one of our brother Billy, who spoke on Kanaki a couple of nights ago, our mana comes from our ancestors. So we rely upon them. So our 50 years is rooted in the thousands of years behind us. So that's my last comment. It's just to talk up with the wonderful speakers, Brooke, leading the Fitz, good to meet you tonight, brother, and welcome. And this place is becoming a hub acknowledge the rangataki.
Kia ora.
Won't take any credit for themselves, but they have organised to make these wonderful people support. And some of our young people. Here and another sister that's just gone, a young sister, Johnny Patrick. They have been leading the way in our spaces. And so,
Thank you, Tony.
Oh, just to go back to the question that was raised as well and the points. Thank you, Tony, first. But I just want to reiterate, I'm very against the bills. The treaty principle bills and facility are not the same. And I think we need to be able to look at and talk about the bills as something that is put in place to remove us from fertility. Like it was like 100 years or 100 plus years of the Crown violating fertility of the thing that they had also signed. And so, the bills are not, they're not there to help us get closer to fertility. They're literally there to pull us away from it. They're there to invalidate it. They're there to completely wipe Māori off and to finish an eradication project. I think we need to look at this colonial effort as a shared one across the world. We can look at, in Haiti, when they freed themselves, they fought against their oppressors, but then they had to pay reparation. Like, they had to pay for the recompensate slave owners and people who, because they had lost what they thought was their property and the investment that they'd given. But that struggle has not ended. We can look across the whole world. I remember I have a friend who talked about in India, it was like 400 years or something, hundreds of years, generations with no memory of a freedom or liberation, but got rid of the British. And so it's this, I would say this state is an infant compared to the states across the world. The Crown, so-called New Zealand, is a freaking newborn baby, but it is still, that doesn't take away any of its viciousness or malice, but there are so many examples across the world of people who have liberated themselves and liberated each other, and that, speaking again to the hope that Zane talked about, we have to really hold dear to, because it's like a reminder of where we're going, and also like a warning of the things to be careful of. Like, independence will not be the end for anyone, it's a beginning. Well, liberation is a beginning. Independence is like a step to get there. Like, these are the legal steps we're getting to, republic, whatever we call it. The honouring of Te will be the beginning. It will not be the final destination, but the bills, stuff the bills. This is something, my understanding of meeting about it here is to hopefully get everyone on board that we are completely against them, against the bills. If it should go to referendum, we're against that we will vote and make sure our people vote. Oh, and I'm anti-vote, to be honest, but I will vote. If it gets to referendum, I will be lobbying to the end of days to make sure this does not get legitimized, even to the Crown. Sorry, I didn't want to leave that unclear. Bills, go to hell. Fertility, we do what we can to honor the true text, the full text, and not the made-up text that David Seymour is trying to fool us with. Sorry.
Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you for your kōrero. So I'm looking at how we can practically challenge this government and its policies. Because we have had a lot of meetings and hui, but we have to actually do tangible things that can actually change and that accounts for people's different skills and abilities. And you mentioned India. India didn't get free of the British very easily. The Mahatma Gandhi had a system of Satyagraha. They were very disciplined and they sacrificed themselves, and they were very organized. And unfortunately, we're a bit touch and go in terms of, there are some people that are motivated and a lot of people are not. So how do we energize people into action? And how do we do tangible things, practical things? You know, we may not have energy to convert, like, you know, maybe your parents or cousins who they just don't listen to anything you say. But what are the practicals? What are the submissions? Maybe we're going to do a march. So, I mean, I've gone to a lot of these hui, and I'm kind of frustrated because I want to do practical things, and yeah. So I want to hear your ideas of these solutions.
Yeah, maybe I'll mention, thanks, Nura. ActionStation has been running a really good campaign led by wahine Māori, so Cassie and Rangi Mangere, called Together for Te Tiriti, and they've been asking people to do 3 things, practical things. So one is buy, if you can, or get a Together for Te Tiriti placard and put it up. That's like visual solidarity. You might have seen that up. The second thing is join the hikoi, and that comes. And then the third thing is, if you can, make a submission against the Treaty Principles Bill and think about hosting a party for submissions. And the thing is, the submissions in this case may make a difference because of the way ACT has set this up. But the other thing I would say is I totally appreciate like wanting to find something tangible and practical, but I do think building up each of our sense of power is quite practical, because if we each feel a little bit more powerful, that means you're a bit more confident in that conversation with your whānau or your community. It means you're more likely to speak up or back in that difficult situation. It means you're more likely to go out in the future. So I do think that's powerful and important. One other thing we can do is show solidarity in other causes, and it's nice to see at the back here, Pata Aleka involved with Roto Kākahi. Crown overreach happens on multiple levels, right? At central government and also at local government, and in Rotorua, the government has overreached in assuming it can push through this sewage wastewater reticulation scheme, and Whasa and the Roto Kākahi Board of Control have led awesome opposition against that, and we can show our solidarity against that, and that's a practical and important step.
So tautoko, one of the best ways right now that you can show solidarity, that you can actually honour Te Tiriti, is to show up at Roto Kākahi. If you can't show up, donate to the kaupapa, whatever you can do, because like I say, there's that kāwanatanga sphere, and we can work within that. We can always, we can be out on the hiko. I'll do that last. But whānau, honouring Te Tiriti is something you can do every day. It's something you can do every day by engaging with Māori communities, by learning the stories of the whenua, that you're standing on right now, by giving land back. That's a good way to honour Te Tiriti too. There are many, straight up, there are many practical ways that you can just like do that work. Show up at your local marae and pitch in, whānau. That's a really, really good, practical, tangible way for you to honour Te Tiriti, and it kind of works towards you having, growing your understanding and education around why it matters so much. Around the hikoi, whānau, like that's coming. And it's happening, and it's happening real soon. And, I look to a couple of the people in the room, they're within the kind of youth work community. And through the youth work community, they should, as a community, they should be mobilizing right now within that kind of youth work community. Yeah, we want to protect Te Tiriti. We want to ensure that none of these boot camps are coming along. If you're in South Auckland, you should be working within your community right now to ensure that your people know, this Te Tiriti Principles Bill is bad for New Zealand. We're marching as South Auckland. And it doesn't matter who you are, whānau, if you're part of a community, that community needs to be there under the banner of we need to protect Te Tiriti. And there's all these other things that the government is putting us at risk of. The gangs, for me, is a big part of this too, whānau. We can't leave anybody behind in this fight for Te Tiriti. The impoverished must be marching with us. Our gang whānau must be marching with us. Because all of that has a whakapapa back to dishonouring Te Tiriti. You know, so it's important that we have representation here, that we organize and then mobilize as communities, so that when we show up in literally like 1 week's time, we show up in a way that like really strikes fear into the heart of these politicians at the moment. Chris Luxon does not want his legacy to be the Prime Minister who sowed racial disharmony in Aotearoa. We're a country that tourists want to visit from all over the world, not if there's just mass civil disobedience all over. We have heaps of power in this space. I don't like to talk about David Seymour that much, because Chris Luxon is the Prime Minister, and we should be holding his feet to the fire here, especially because so many people made a slight shift to national, and all of a sudden we've got these like ACT policies that are coming out. We've got these New Zealand First policies that are coming out. I'm speaking to Chris Luxon. This is his legacy. It's not David Seymour's. It's Chris Luxon's legacy, and he is going to be the Prime Minister that sows racial disharmony unless we stop it.
I think it's good as well to remember there's like short-term wins and long-term wins. I think, you know, the discussion of like reo and revitalization for a lot of our people who have been oppressed by the crown or where culture has been withheld from us, that's often like a long-term goal, you know, like it's something we fight for, knowing we may not see it in our generation, but your children or nieces, nephews, nibblings, grandchildren, wherever, that if we can make it possible for them, that's a huge one. And that I think most people would agree, like that is something worth fighting for, that we may not see freedom or liberation, but if we can make sure, I don't care if it's 3 generations or what, as long as we get there, but that's long term. But the short term stuff, I think as well, is to remember community for everyone is different. It might just be your family, it might be your chosen family, it might be roommates or like 3 friends that you catch a bus with. But it's that, and nurturing that, and going back to what you said about having that love, regardless of difference, not all the time. If someone's terrible and it's harmful to you, walk away from it. But if you can stand to be there, if that is not going to harm you, if you can nurture that community one-on-one, even if it's one person, even if it is just within yourself, to light the fire in your own belly, to keep going, that I think is a worthwhile thing. We have all these tools, and I fully hear you. Like, I think we all would love to see something happen and be able to do something. But again, as you said, there's strategy. We, I think, are still in a stage of having to extend that belief in ourselves and that faith in people and the power of people. I think we're still at a very early stage of doing that. And yeah.
Now, to talk to all the kōrero that's happening, a question that I was thinking while I was sitting here was, so how long's the treaty been around? 150 years? Yeah, 180. And in that 180 years, the Crown Corporations never honoured it. So what makes us think that they're going to honour it if they haven't honoured it in 180 years? And the thing is that we all know cycles continue until the lesson is learned. So how long are we going to continue the cycle of fighting for them to honour the treaty? And like, what's the lesson that we got to learn here? Because for the last 180 years, they haven't honoured it. So what makes us here think that when we're going to go and march and then live out the rest of our lives fighting, that they're going to honour it when we're here and when we're gone 3-4 generations from now? It's already been 5-6 generations. So, because what's the saying? Insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again,
And expecting
a different result. So all we're doing is we're just doing the same thing over and over again. March, hui, expecting a change. So maybe we need to really bring our thoughts and our minds together to see that there's another way to do this. That's just me sitting here in my thoughts. So I think there's a lot of smart people in here, a lot of clever minds. What is it that we need to do? Because are we happy for our great-grandchildren to do the same fight? Are we happy? Is that what we want to leave behind? Because that's what's going to happen. You know, at any time we can leave this earth. At any time, there's no guarantee on how long we're going to be here for to fight the fight. But just know that the cycle is going to continue again. 50 years from now, we'll pretty much all not be here. But the ones that are here after us will be having the same kōrero. You know, let's go march over there. The government's doing this, the Crown Corporation's doing this. So I just want to know, like, because I did hear what you said, like, you're happy to fight for 3 generations, but it's already been 6. So
I would actually disagree. I think I completely understand what you're saying, but even if we look 20 years ago, there was no way this panel will be talking about this. That's a huge change, and I think even in South Auckland, like the face of South Auckland has changed drastically. The politics of South Auckland have changed and grown drastically. Our people were not talking about class when they came here. If I look at my parents' generation, I don't want to cry. But with them, they weren't talking about rights or anything. Like, all they cared about is surviving the crown. And so I think I fully understand what you're saying, and I do agree in a lot of ways, but I think we need to see where these things are a win. Of course, I don't want anyone's generations, I don't want us to have to be fighting in 3 generations. If I could bring a comet down to strike the beehive, I would. Like that.
We'll talk about it.
Come here. No, but I think that is a really we need to see how we've changed. Our mass migration into this country is completely different. Our people who have travelled this way, thank you. Our people who have come here, we've got way more of our island people here than we've ever had before. But the way we are talking about these things is different. And that is a result of that stuff. Like, I can look at, I've got 9 siblings, there's 10 of us. My parents, one of them has 10 sisters, they've got like 100 children across the whole, on both sides. But the development of this politics is freaking huge. Like, that's the only way. When I hear about hikoi, when I hear about even petitions to government, it's not to convince them. I don't have any faith in Christopher Luxon, Jacinda Ardern, and any politician. Even if my friend should go join a political party, I don't trust that they're gonna be the ones who listen to us. I look at government strategically as we have the power in our communities and joining our communities to force their hand, to say, we're going to make sure you have no choice but to do this thing. And that is only so we can make way for the bigger change, that deeper change that needs to come through. But we can't afford to...
Back off now.
Yeah, it's something... We cannot... It's like, the way I see it, it's like relinquishing. It's like, if I think, what's the point we're doing this over and over again? Sometimes it's literally, this could be the wrong way to do it. This hui could actually be a fail. It's not. No, everything, hikoi, anything, they can all be the wrong strategy or the worst strategy. But if it brings anyone, if, say, some child shows up and has the better freaking idea of how to achieve this, then I think it's worth it. But sometimes as well, it's just good to be with people to remind yourself. This room is way bigger than it would have been even freaking 5 years ago in Papakura. Like, it would not garner this group except at Papakura Marae, which does not get the wider community support it should do for all the good that it freaking puts out to everyone. We do not get these numbers, and if people don't see us, yeah. So I think I would say I get you there, but I think it's alright.
Cool.
Sorry, can I speak on that?
Go.
I just want to talk about what the brother said because I'm from South Auckland and I have a lot of family members who are under the same mentality. Same as my dad. I literally came back from fornicating and drilling down into me. Like, I totally see it and I get it. It's like we don't want to repeat that because I don't want my kids having to do what he could. I can't even do what he could because health problems of my own. But anyway, I hear that. But for me, it's seeing the intensity of all of the colonization over the generations. It hasn't been this intense. So we are fighting this, and in my opinion, with us all coming together, it's so that we can continue to come together. It's so that we can see our generations, even if the other politicians come in and they're like, oh yeah, okay, we want to put this and this in. Our people are going to come together because we've done it before. So that's what I see from it. I want my kids to be able to continue the fight, but with the people that they've built, that we've brought along the way, so that it's easier for them. It's in the long run, of course, but it's so that we can all still fight together.
Can I just say something very quickly? And you know that community, which I think you kind of touched on really briefly, sis, that's important now as ever.
Sorry,
can I
just speak up a little bit?
The community is important now as ever.
Thank you.
You know, and I've seen in various areas, Māori, non-Māori, Tauiwi, I'm seeing the real change collectively come, you know. And so, while I don't want my nieces and nephews to have to harbour on and continue this fight, if it means they have to for us, for all of us, so be it. So be it.
So there's a few different whakapapa. There's this one saying that just like popped into my mind, which is like the wheel of change turns slowly, but it turns, you know. And then there's another whakatauki, which is, I know that whata will not, but it's like we've come too far to not go further, you know what I mean? And so, bro, I know that we've hikoid, but you know, if you think back to something like parihaka, they were sending kids out. They were sending kids out to get bashed and arrested by police, and we stand on the shoulders of them. I have only learnt my reo because of kids who went through kura kaupapa Māori. You know, my reo has been given to me by a generation lower than me, from a generation above me that marched for te Petihana Māori so that kura kaupapa Māori, te aho mātua could exist today, and we stand on the, and you know, like, my dreams are that, like, you know, my mokopuna will all speak te reo Māori, and that's off that fight, but it's a slow change. Martin Luther King had that, the arc of justice, like, bends towards, you know, what's right, and so, but it takes a long time, and I understand this. It's slow work. This will not be the last march, Carl? Like, we'll be marching for ages. This will not be the last David Seymour, Carl? That stuff is embedded into the system. This will go on for ages. But we are making incremental steps towards tino rangatiratanga. The amount of people who even understand what that concept is now is so different to when I was young. So, and bro, like, this is stuff that we're seeing in South Auckland as well, in terms of the way that we're kind of like getting it back for ourselves, for our own communities. And so, but I get it, and sometimes even as an activist, I'm like, oh, well, this is hopeless, you know? But I don't need hope. Hope is irrelevant to me. All I want is to know that those who fought before me, I'm honouring that fight now, and I know that that energy will be transferred into the people who have to carry it on after me, and the people who carry it on after that, and then soon we'll be looking back at a world where this hui will be held, eat te reo Māori, and we'll look back at some of the shit that we like had as a society and be like, what the hell? Like, people used to beat kids in this country, my mother, for speaking te reo Māori, you know? And I never got my reo from my mum, but because of that generation, the grandkids have got it now. You know what I mean? And so we are making progress. It's real easy to be like, nah, yeah, we're still stuck at the bottom, because essentially in so many ways we are, but we are like clawing our way up. We're crabs in a bucket whānau, but we're pulling out every single one of us up with us, not back down with us. So, but it's easy to see that. It's easy to see that these hikois don't work, because Whina Kupa marched almost 50 years ago, and we're still marching now. But Whina Kupa achieved stuff. She helped achieve Ihu Mātau. She helped achieve Bastion Point. And before you know it, we'll have Roto Kākahi. You know, that will be returned to them in a way where they get to honour their whenua because of Te Tiriti. And so, like, we're just standing on the shoulders of giants right now, and we're just making sure that our shoulders are strong enough for the generations that come after us to stand on our shoulders too. So change is happening right now. It's just hard to see, and it's happening slowly, but it's fucking happening.
Solid.
Sorry. And then Brother Leopard But I just want to say, I'll put out there now, brother, because again, it is hard to see the changes, but I think one of the important changes to talk about that we are seeing consistently is the pātaka kai.
Kia ora.
We all came together as a community, we put this community together, and they're still going in front of my kids' school. So I think that's one of the significant changes that we've seen recently, where people try to bring us down, but we all got together and we came together for community. I think that's something that we can kind of reflect on.
I think just looking to I felt that for quite a long time actually, and the natural person that I thought of myself is I want to go out and force change in a way that doesn't mana or enhance our people. Whether that is physically going to bring down buildings, you know, it's stuff that is at that. It's diddy, it's that art with diddy, the wahi or two that you walk into, and which is almost natural for us to be able to do. But that's not how we will change. It's actually through the hearts and the minds of our people.
Sure.
I think the way that I can talk into that is if I'm talking into what's happening down Roto Kākahi, where I'm from, one of the many places. Change in itself is hard, and it's like the bro Zane, he talked about Dane Whina, who's my tino kui actually. She done an action that caused things like kohangai, whakapapa, te apo matua, whare wāna, you know, you've got different things now that are coming back for our people, so that change, even though we can't see it, is happening. But in order for that change to happen, we have to start. And seeing things like this out here in South Auckland, I'm from West Auckland.
You might not make it out again.
I'm from West Auckland, but the coding is pretty much the same. Our people, Māori and Pasifika, because I hononga as a Māori and as Tongan, I understand the conversations that we had growing up through the 80s to the 90s. Change has happened from the 80s and 90s to where we are now. To have us all meet together in this room, you know, kanaka whenua, kanaka moana, you know, kanaka titi, is a massive step forward, which is for me amazing. If I talk into Roto Kākahi itself, a lot of the change in itself with my whānau is actually having these courageous and brave conversations with them about taking steps forward. A lot of our people, especially Te Arawa, they are an iwi that likes to work with kawana. They like to work as a partner with councils, with the local central government body. And a lot of our people, the older generation, are too kind of scared or hesitant to actually make a move against forcing change for the betterment of our people, for te paia. And so it's actually taking the younger generation, the rangatahi, who have foresight and who are actually willing to make the change by going out and having another whenua and protecting the whenua by living on the whenua, because that's what we've learned down in Roto Kākahi peacefully. Forcing change to these power holders. The power holders are the likes of these local central government bodies, in order to
call on the leaders of change. And so in order for that to happen, these things need to happen first. Taranoa, hui, waranga, our people, our tupuna, who navigated the largest and deepest ocean in the world, have continued to do that. And the oceans now are just, but we're still doing that. And that happened over a long period of time. And so seeing this, man, we've got power in this.
I'm a local, lived in Mangere for 20 years now. I spend my working days as a union organiser working with cleaners, orderly, security and kitchen staff. And I connected with what you were saying and some of what you were saying as well there, and I just wanted to comment that thing about, do we have to keep doing this? And why do we have to keep doing this? And I find working with people who are the lowest paid workers in the hospital setting is the space where I work, okay? People often blame themselves for why they're at the bottom. And I think that's an important thing to consider as well in the context of this whole conversation, is that there is a reason why you are at the bottom. And that is because the system is not fit for you. And so part of marching, I've done my bit, anti-Vietnam War, nuclear movement, anti-Springbok tour, you know, my feet are a bit tired, so I'm really invigorated by being around you and seeing that youth and energy coming through. You make me very proud. But what we need to do, and what I have needed to do myself, is understand the political environment in which this is happening, because it's not just happening in New Zealand. There's a neoliberal, capitalistic system in the world out there and in here, and that's why we are at the bottom, because that's where they want us to be. And I think you allude to that a bit, Zane, as well. But so there's a political aspect to what we do, and if we don't change the political system or the way in which we value our lives, then the politicians will keep doing what power wants them to do. So I hope it gives you some hope. But we can keep marching, but all we ever ask for is the crumbs off the table. We will keep marching forever. So there's big change, there's big picture change that we need to make.
I mean, like, as a young person, I can, like, sort of, I can't understand, but I can empathize with the fact, like, of being tired. Like, that seems, but I can see the point and keep marching because I can see the difference between me and my younger sister. She's grown up proud to be Māori, and I, at the age of 8, was screaming that I'm not. And so it's small things like that which make a huge difference. If it's just so we can keep having kids proud to be Māori, then like I'm happy to keep doing that. Keep doing this just for that.
I'm happy to keep marching too, even though I might be a bit slower than I used to be. I'm happy to keep doing it, but what I'm saying is that there is a reason why we have to keep doing it.
Like, another reason for like the Treaty Principles Bill is they'll be able to sell off our land to BlackRock, which is also another corporation which is involved in the genocide, and Honeywell as well, sell off our land to them for mining, and they can make a difference. Sorry.
Can I say something too? Part of our Mangere AAAP is holding the NSD system accountable for their changes in their acts and their legislation every day. So we've got to stay on top of that to make them accountable for that. And I also think that in itself is huge power because it's knowledge, and we can all bring our little thing, and we've done that just by coming here tonight. So each of us have beautiful skill sets and techniques that some of us don't have. But we put that together, and it's a big, beautiful mixing bowl, really. So it's just holding them accountable, and I think that knowledge is the power that can start from, like, actually quite a high point.
Kia ora.
just have like a sort of, it's kind of on the topic of like holding people accountable and sort of, you know, trying to enact real change. Like, I love all the positive kōrero and coming together and being around like-minded people. But for me, I'm on a similar page as the brother here. You know, been to many things, and I'm just like, you know, you mentioned, ACT, the way that they've done it now, the submissions to this bill actually might change things. And for me, I'm like, okay, well, what's that number? And how many submissions have we done so far? You know, I'm just looking for a practical step. Do we need 15,000 submissions? By what date? And does that guarantee that we're going to stifle this thing? You know, because that's a conversation I can have someone who's a swing voter, who's a thing. You know, I can't talk to some people around like, you know, it's just like global neoliberal Israel stuff. Like, that just turns people off. I'm just, you know, if I say, hey, look, you can do a submission, we're at 4,000, we only need 6,000, and then this thing goes into a step back. You know, what are those numbers there? You know, what's something I can actually grab? Because I'm full of dreams, I've got plenty of that. I just need some like hard ground to stand on and to give to others who are kind of unaware of that.
So,
Is there a fixed number that they need? I was like, damn,
how do we go about getting that fixed number and blowing that number up so all of us know, hey, look, regardless of our differences, like you said, brother, we're coming from different places, all of us, whether it be the jab or the war or the this or the that, you know, actually we all agree this is the number though, you know, because that's a real tangible thing and it's sort of indiscriminate.
Yeah, I'll do my best. I think that's a totally fair question, but yeah, and I totally hear you. Like, it's good to have like really clear goals that we can work towards. What I can say is it's likely they're going to introduce the Treaty Principles Bill into the House on the 18th of November. They'll introduce it to Cabinet, and that week it will go into the House. Soon after that, probably like the end of November, it goes to Select Committee, late November. Then there's 6 months that it's going to be at Select Committee. So that's our like clear time frame for it being in Select Committee. And then, so at that point, we have to out-mobilise Hobson's Pledge. Now, the problem in trying to give an answer to your good question is what Tony said earlier, which is Hobson's Pledge has been organising for 20 years behind closed doors. So what we have to do is we have to beat Hobson's Pledge at that game. But because we don't know their numbers, I can't give you like a specific number now. What I do know is that ActionStation, led by Wahine Māori, have been doing awesome work, including with other Māori rōpū, and they'll be coming out with some very clear things that you can do as soon as that goes to Select Committee. So keep an eye on ActionStation's website, Together for Te Tiriti. Know that there's that 6-month period to make submissions, host parties for people to make submissions, encourage people to make oral submissions, and yeah, I'm happy to talk more about this, but very fair question. I've tried to share as many specifics as I have and just keep watching this space.
Can I just ask, Max, when it comes to the submissions and then the Select Committee, does that stop people's mandated referendum happening?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, nah, the short answer is no. Okay, so this is the other reason it's really important for us to get mobilised now, as I think Anivilis alluded to, before this all begins, because one risk is we win through Select Committee, right? So it doesn't go past Select Committee, it gets shut down. But then, as Zane is pointing out, what can happen is a citizens-initiated referendum, and there's been murmurings that this is what Hobson's Pledge is wanting to do. So to get that, they need to sign up 10% of registered voters, that's 300,000 people. So they need to sign up 300,000 people, and if they sign that up, then they can force the whole country to vote on this as a citizens-initiated referendum. It wouldn't be binding, but it would be another way to toxify understandings of te tiriti. So that's why we have to be so clear right now about how horrific this bill is, how it's part of a broader damaging agenda, so that no one is tempted to sign that for a citizens-initiated referendum. And also so that people say never again, as Hone Harawira said in this last week, like we need to send a message to politicians and say, you can never try this again, because they will try it again. There will be other David Seymours. But if there is a strong enough response now, the Select Committee and after, we can honour what Tina Ngata said on the weekend, he tapu te tiriti.
So it's really a digital transaction that's really going to slow this thing down realistically, isn't it? It's like sending these emails to our politicians and, obviously before it goes into Parliament, how do we, we should be sending emails to every politician saying that we don't, this is something that we as a community don't vote for, realistically, because that's who they speak upon, is individual communities.
Yeah, but I would say there that, like, there's no level that we shouldn't be attacking them on.
True.
Do you know what I mean? Whether it's digital, whether we're showing up, whether we're marching, like all of these banner drops, whatever, Parliament House, however it works, we need to be like engaging every single way, because that's the way that they're targeting us, and like at every level. And it's just really important that we're pretty coy about this, like sharp in terms of analysing, what are they up to over here? Yeah, they're pushing for, and it seems like Chris Luxon doesn't even want this to happen. Kind of seems like they're pushing for a people's initiated referendum anyway. Do you know what I mean? And kind of being able to see that and speak into that is really important, so we can just identify it as racist rhetoric, but it has to happen at every single level in terms of our resistance. Like, I'm one of those people, bro, that I just love being on the streets, like in terms of marching, and I love doing like mischievous stuff to kind of disrupt the system. Shut up, but then there's other people who are like really, really good in their submission space, and kia koutou te mana. Like, that's where you should be, but that isn't to say that I would encourage everybody to show up when we mobilise under like this whakaro kotahitanga. Like, if we're calling for unity under this, then we show up together under that as well. But all levels, we should be attacking them as well. And as strategic as they're being, we're in South Auckland, like, we know how to be strategic out these ways. We know how to operate in a way that is akin to just like an organisation that is forward thinking and looking to undermine these people, because that's what they're doing in their groups right now. And so we need to be doing that exact same thing.
I think something that I found helpful for like actions, because there's lots I disagree with, or I'm like, that's so useless, what's it gonna do? Like, sometimes it's me being a hater, and sometimes I actually sometimes I do think, like what you said, like strategically, and I can't see a point to that, or I feel like it might drain energy from, where we need it. But for me, what I do is like, there are 3 things I'll check, like whether this will help myself, just, think if it will get us to a specific goal, like submissions and stuff, which generally I don't care about submissions, but for this, I care about submissions. I'm like, if I can see like a fixed thing that it will achieve, like a fixed step we can reach, then all good. And the third is if this is necessary for achieving liberation, and that sounds really like vague, but for me, when I talk about titiriti, it's as something that liberates our people and all people. Like, it's the Crown government current system does not liberate our non-Māori Pacific peoples, definitely does not liberate Māori peoples, but titiriti and my understanding of it, which again, I could be wrong to be honest, but that is something because it is a necessity for liberation, I'll go, check, I'll support that thing. But if they don't check any of those for you, then you have to find your own. I think that even having a set a date or a number or something to do, that can be as simple as like, I'm going to have one like korangai, or like one gathering with your friends a month. And that to meet that every time is building community for the purpose of liberation. You might not talk about it in the first thing, it might just be a catch-up, but guarantee, like after 4 or 5 months, even maybe after just the first, to have a relationship where you can talk openly about those things is a huge deal. I don't know about you guys, but if you look at the point where, for me, my politics were terrible before, but if you try to remember the point at which it changed, or where your understanding of something changed, where you felt moved to join a movement, or felt moved to march, or burn something legal, or, you know, that is we have to remember what those turning points are. And for me, it's always been through relationship. It's through people that I've met who opened my eyes to something I couldn't fathom before. And that would not have happened if not for our community building. So again, it's not like concrete, but we can make it concrete by having those. Again, like you said before, we set that for ourselves. We don't have to wait for a Crown government mandated thing for us to meet. But actually, we can do that. We can make it as focused or as strategic, as tactical, or as easygoing as we like. And so I don't think we can give the answer, but at least if we can encourage to strategize and come up with some. And even tell us if we're wrong. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'll go to Tyler.
Love being around here for LGBT. I'm going to be very open and honest. I don't know it myself, but I know that I'm having to. But what I am wanting to know and what I want to say about this family, and probably not even this, I want to know how it affects, like, I mean like everyone, but like my whakapapa, so like my Sāmoan and Southside. So I got Sāmoan and Southside family. So if all of this stuff goes through, because, you know, when other people, you know, especially again my Sāmoan side, they're like, oh, it's just the Māori. I'm Māori, not you. Like, yeah, it's like, yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, you have, like, our island brothers and sisters that are just like, oh, but it's just for security. It's like, it's all that. But how does it affect them so that we can tell them, like, as a person in the middle that's like, hey, I'm all for that, this is going to affect you too. Like, how do we have that conversation? What do we do there to make sure they understand? Because I think that's how I target my people in Southside. Like, again, I'm surrounded by all of my island family, but it's like, I don't know how to navigate that. I'm like, oh, it's important. But, yeah. So, yeah.
That's honestly how to navigate a whakapapa. Is that through that, like the Samoan brothers are tuakana and we are Tēnei younger brother. And if they can do it on us, the younger brother, then what can they do upon the older brother? So it's whakapapa. Regardless of whatever happens, that even the relation that will happen here in Aotearoa, the whakapapa that will come from Te Tiriti will go out into the Pacific. Because we're connected, we are all connected. So I think it's really important that when you are related to your Samoan whānau, is that through whakapapa, that whatever happens here, it will generationally carry on along that lineage line, and no matter how far way back it goes, it will go to there. So I think it's really important, and it is threatening on the islands, that if they can treat us as a colonial empire that we've signed so closely with the Crown, and they could go over to your island and do the same, at what point do they sign a treaty and they start the same process that they started here through the same whakapapa lineage? So yeah. Sorry, I'm looking to the right.
I mean, I think also what's really important to remember is that, thank you, is that, this isn't even bloody on anyway.
Pass that point further.
Yeah, it's getting late. I'm really mindful of the time. I know it's getting late, and so I really want us to wrap up. So, but I think what's really important to kind of share with our family members who might not be super political is that letting them know that government, every decision that they make impacts our lives, everything in our lives. So they set the minimum wage. If our people are in low wage jobs, that's because the government set that wage. You know what I mean? They set all of the rules, they set all of the frameworks, and so beyond the Treaty Principles Bill, we're already living in a society where we have a group of people that believe that they're superior to others. That's at the core of it. That's what the system that we're living in at the moment. And so in order to remind ourselves, reflect to each other actually, because we're mirrors to each other. And so, like you say, reclaiming and remembering your power, your fire, that it helps to ignite and for others to remember in theirs. And I think, to be honest, all of us have things that we need to work through and shed from living in this system. This idea simply that I'm better than you because I have this and you don't, or I have this type of job, I've had this type of education, even my clothes, even the way we look. And I think all of us have those things to work through. And the transformation that we need, actually, and that you talk about, constantly reliving the cycle until we get the lessons, because we all have lessons, actually, like personal, each of us individual, like as individuals, but we're all here together. And so I think, yeah, just reminding our fam, like, they have all the power, they make all the choices for you. The reason why we're living the way that we are is because decisions that are made in that house. And so making it real for people, like even the cost of food, you know what I mean? Like, we have to pay for education. That's because they said that this is how we have to live. And so reminding people, like, that, because we think so often, like, oh yeah, but it's just the Māoris. Oh, politics doesn't affect me. That's bullshit. That's a lie that's being fed to us so that we can stay disconnected from what's going on in that space. And so if you can make it real for people in a real tangible way, like you say, simply even like gas prices, you know what I mean? Real, like, everyday things, even rent. You know what I mean? Like rent, housing, all those things, housing, education, health, like all of these things are dictated to us by these egoistic maniacs in power. And so for us, it's so important to remember, like, none of us are superior to any of us. Like, that's such a lie too. There's no such thing that anyone has or doesn't have that makes any of us better than anyone else. So we need to shed that too, because we've also learned that. That's not something that, you know, inherently people came here and said, oh yo, this is how, these are the values now that you have to live by, and violently enforce them. And so for me, what I think about in terms of, like, we know really clearly what the symptoms are, we know what's happening and how to describe them, but we don't often talk about why. Why are we doing these things? Like, why are they doing that? And for me, it stems from this place of fear. We're really scared of each other, like, and for whatever reason, like, and so a really beautiful example of, like, protest and remembering and reclamation is ihumātao. Like, Panya wasn't able to be here tonight to speak, she missed her flight, but I remember going to ihumātao and thinking, this is the model for something new, because they embodied the values that we need, which was peace, which was love, which was manaki, and everyone came together free. They all came and gave freely of their time, their money, anything that they had, they contributed. And to me, that's like, oh, that's the vision. Like, if we can all embody those values that we're calling for, then transformation, fuck the crown. Like, they don't have nothing. Cut out. Because we're our own, we are the ones. Like, we're the ones we've been waiting for, we're here. And so if we can embody the values that we're calling for, yeah, the crown becomes irrelevant. And so that's, to me, the, like, real heart work that's required. So, yeah. Can we close, please? Sorry. It's getting no, I'm just hella late, and I know people have this Friday. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your time, so generously listening. Everybody here on the panel, like, thank you so much for the work that you guys do and the values that you embody in our community, so that we can see. I really, really urge and encourage us all to remember that we are mirrors to each other. So whatever that we're doing and reflecting to each other, like make sure that it's from a place of power, from a place of love, and remembering in the sacredness that Ane was speaking to earlier, not just of te tiriti, but actually the sacredness that all of us have, each of inherently has, because we're alive. And a lot of us talk about like the mana, you know, that exists in everyone. So, and every living thing, like this thing is, I'm just like this. We're floating in the middle of who knows where on this beautiful, magnificent, like magical planet that is so generous and like gives to us so freely. And like let's not forget, like this is magic, fam. Like we're living in a dream, like, and yeah, that kind of dreaming and power is like no one can take that away. Like, and so yeah, is there anything else that anyone wants to say in closing?
Not really in closing, but just something to add. Sorry, I think just to that, something I found really helpful, just in case it is helpful to others, and talking to our people non-Māori is also to help them understand what violence is. Like there are things, especially I would say for Sāmoan people, like we laugh at hidings and things that we got hit by our parents and stuff, and it's a part of it. But actually, a lot of our elders and before them, when they're in the moment, like any of us, it's not funny. But because we look at it, we look at those things as funny things. We start to think this is just in our home life. But as Brooke said, being able to one, remind our elders, cousins, siblings, whoever, what it felt like to be made small, and then draw that to the reason that is even the case is because of the crown system. Even things of Pacific women are the lowest paid, have the lowest wages in the country. That has a direct impact on what happens to us at home. And so that making it the big political stuff also really personal in your home doesn't mess with things. It's not going to make them 100% side with Māori, but it will at least remind them, like, one, to look at actually where are you standing, and not just in whenua, but what is